Buddha.
T-Slay! Rags in the air, when we wake up. Rags in the air, rags in the air. Get this paper. Rags in the air, rags in the air. I bake the cake up. Rags in the air, rags in the air. I step my weight up. Rags in the air, rags in the air, rags in the air, rags in the air, rags in the air.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the T Show. It's me, Tahyira. For those of you guys that don't know, the T Show, hosted by me, Tahyira Savannah, is a visual and storytelling platform honoring a community of like-minded individuals who are passionate about creating change and leaving a positive impact on the world. My guests come from all diverse backgrounds and experiences. They share one common goal, though: getting their talents and passions to make a difference in the world. From artists to musicians to entrepreneurs to activists, each guest brings a unique perspective and valuable insight to our show. Today, I am with some fabulous directors, Peter and Lucas. They directed and produced a project called Devil Put Coal in the Ground. Now, I'm always intrigued by anybody that's brave enough to use the devil in their movie film title, so shout out to you guys. But welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Of
It's good
course.
to be here.
Yay.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go through you guys' bios really quick, and then we're gonna jump into some questions. I watched the movie within the last 2 days, so it's pretty fresh in my mind. It's just came out on Apple TV. We said 13 days ago. So you guys, after this video, you can go, we'll leave the link there. You can go rent it, check it out, share it with your communities. This is the reason we're doing this. Peter is an award-winning filmmaker, best-selling author, educator, shout out to you, and activist, shout out to you. Two of those things are similar to me. His critically acclaimed films include Requiem for the American Dream, The Cure for Hate, bearing witness to Auschwitz, which we also covered on my media site, the Red Eye Media Group, Devil Put Coal in the Ground, which is what we're discussing today, Healing from Hate, Battle for the Soul of the Nation, and the forthcoming The Invisible Doctrine, The Secret History of Neoliberalism. So it's a lot of kind of like political, kind of sort of documentary storytelling with like a social element to it, which we love here. You're the co-founder at Eat the Moon Films and Big Tent Productions.
That's right. Thank you for the intro.
For sure. And next up, we have Lucas. Director, producer, edited the forthcoming The Invisible Doctrine, The Secret History of Neoliberalism, the award-winning Devil Put the Coal in the Ground, The Man Card, White Male Identity Politics, and Angry White Men, Masculinity in the Age of Trump. He produced and edited the CIMA award-winning Healing from Hate, Battle for the Soul of the Nation, as well as The Cure for Hate, bearing witness to Auschwitz. So you guys are like tag team creative partners, like you guys are out here in the world, really trying to do the thing. First question.
Right.
Why do you guys
No one can
think
do it alone.
that part? Teamwork makes the dream work. We believe that here at the T Show.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm gonna steal that one. That's a good bumper sticker.
Why do you guys think this story, Devil Put Coal in the Ground, has an audience in 2024?
That's a great question. I think we see a lot of talk about male grievance these days, particularly in the from the MAGA circles, from Trump campaign, from JD Vance. There's a lot of fascination around the defection of middle class and blue collar white men from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. A lot of that has been chalked up to a very, I think, reductionistic view of sort of white grievance. And in essence, that's really how we ended up going to West Virginia to make this movie in the first place. We were working with a sociologist, Michael Kimmel, brilliant man, who had published a book called Angry White Men, which was about white male grievance, and the rise of Trump and what would become the MAGA movement. And we wanted to go someplace to interview some of the supposed angry white men, to learn about why they learn more about this shift rightward, to learn what they were thinking, to learn what they're feeling, to better understand what was happening. And so we kind of looked at the map, and we were looking at all these different data points. We were looking at places that were socioeconomically challenged. We were looking places with high diseases of despair, high, drug addiction and opioid rates, and other factors, and things on the face of it look pretty bleak in West Virginia. So we said, hey, here's a state that's voted, historically Republican. It's predominantly white. We probably, I'll bet if we go down to West Virginia, that we can really generate some really interesting interviews around this.
Absolutely.
What happened is we went down to West Virginia and we found none of that. We found no angry white men, at least in the way that, we were sort of the lens that sociologist Michael Kimmel was looking at things through. What we instead found were people who were absolutely devastated by extractive industries that had been destroying the state for generations now. And the cumulative toll that had taken, it was clear that people's souls and the soul of their communities were paying this incredibly high price for these predatory capitalist endeavors. And I came back with these interviews and I said, Lucas, I don't think that these are going to fit into the project that we went down there to explore and try and film these for, but take a look at them and see what you think.
So then I took that footage and I tried to kind of shoehorn it into that film that became Healing from Hate, which is available on Amazon Prime. And it just didn't fit. It was a different film, and so I was like, you know what, I'm going to put this on the back burner. And then when we're done with this film, I'll revisit that footage. And I put together kind of the strongest 45, 50 minutes from those interviews. And, as an editor in the industry for 20, 25 years, I've looked at thousands of interviews, and I would say 3 or 4 of them were in the top 10, I'd ever seen. And so I knew there was some, real special gold in there. And so, I presented this 45, 50-minute cut to Peter and David Kuhn, who's the other producer on this project. And we all agreed that we had, a real special film on our hands and that we now needed to augment this material with new footage, And what struck us was, the opioid crisis was, in the news a lot, and it still is. I mean, that part of the story, it's not completely resolved. Of course, we see all these settlements, and then, the next thing you know, that's overturned. It's never like fully resolved, or hasn't yet, So that aspect of the story, certainly speaks volumes to the suffering that's going on across the country, and every single interview that we did, and again, when we went there, we weren't interviewing for this particular topic. Everybody either had a family member who died or was devastated by the opioid epidemic, across the board. And every person had someone in their family's life cut drastically short due to some extractive industry, mostly coal mining. So, those health epidemics are not just, a problem in West Virginia. They are a problem all over the world. And we've screened this film, in about 20 countries. And, we just had a review in Germany where the reviewer was talking about the coal industry in Germany and that there are similar problems there. And we screened it in, Portugal.
You skipped ahead a bit, but that was my next question. You jumped right into it. Go. How did the community respond to the film? No, I love it. You segued yourself.
Yeah.
Tell us more about what people said.
Yeah, we were advised that, because of the environmental issues, to kind of pigeonhole the film in the environmental film festival world, which we didn't know much about. And so we launched the film at the DCEFF, which is, supposedly the best environmental film festival in America. It's in the nation's capital. And, we had no expectations at all on how this film was going to be received, because it was real like a people's history of West Virginia. It's not
Right.
a film about stats. It's about
Right.
a film that is true to people's
Mm-hmm.
suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And we won the audience award, at the first festival. So we were like, oh wow, this is we have something in our hands now that we were, pretty surprised by. Of course, as the filmmakers, we love the film and are really proud of it. So we're glad to see that audiences were responding the same way we saw the material. So that really, as you know, as a filmmaker, if you screen at a festival and if you win an award, you just get on so many more people's radars,
Of course you do.
So yeah,
And I
so then,
and I can attest to that to our audience who hasn't seen the film yet. And we encourage you guys to really download it on Apple and, share it with your environmental friends, people who are into climate change and stuff. Because what I hear a lot is, how come more people don't talk about it? And I'm like, there's things out that you guys don't even know about. You're not leveraging, like people putting in all this work, doing films, putting it up in DC and trying, but we have to join that wave. How Marvel movies are popular. It's the same thing. We talk about them. Like, it's like, I've always said
Sure.
that. And a person who watched it, I definitely can see what I would say. You guys maybe didn't have the stats, but what you definitely did, it was the narration. You have the voices of the people who the stats affect. It's like, we don't need to see the stats. If we could feel as a human, somebody lost their family member. I heard the word black lung in like almost every other, and I'm like, how does all of you guys, and I'm like, I'm thinking as a documentary filmmaker and then just a American, it's like, how did they go there and just randomly find people who are all have the same story? These people probably don't even know each other like that, but they're like the same, go through the same exact thing. So that's what
right.
we see as the
That's
audience
right.
is like, and that's what you were able to capture. That is the stats though, technically.
Well, it was really, I'm glad that resonated for you. I think it was really important for us as filmmakers to stay out of the way and let these people tell their own stories. I don't think we didn't want to be accused of, parachute journalism. We didn't want the film to be exploitive. These people are remarkable, resilient, smart, incredible people who opened up their hearts and their lives to us. Um, they're all, some of them are from the same community, but all of the interviews took place within sort of the same region. And we wanted to honor them, and we wanted to honor their history, and we wanted to honor their community and their traditions, which are in peril now, right? There's you drive down a main street in a lot of these towns in West Virginia, and it looks like some post-apocalyptic film. There's nothing there
I
anymore.
always say it doesn't even look like America. That's how I always say it like that. Like you would think that you're in a different country, and that's to me,
Yeah,
it's crazy.
but you are, right? And I think some of these people even compared their downtowns to, what Beirut may look like, right? There's not much left.
For sure.
And so I just I think I'm glad that you picked up on the piece about the narrative element, because
Oh
we
no.
really
Yeah,
we
it's
know it's a
there.
challenge for certain moviegoers and viewers to sit with people's stories, but we felt that it was a really important thing for us and a challenge for us as filmmakers to figure out how to do that, right? And I think, both Lucas and I are very proud of what we achieved with the film.
For sure. I would say I can, as a person that watched two of your documentaries now and stories, I could see that kind of human aspect you guys are trying to do, even in the Cure for Hate, bearing witness, like even how you put the title, it's like, it's very hard for people to get behind a mindset that they don't match. But if you like present it to us through the eyes of somebody, you know what I mean? It's like, all right, it's just another person. Let me see what they're gonna say. Instead of just going into it angry or going into it with it like loaded with all your thoughts. You could just sit there and just kind of watch it. And then as you're watching, your emotions are gonna start just moving you. Either I don't care about this, it's like I can't believe this is happening, jump on Twitter. Like, you know? So keep it up, you guys. That's what I would say. I want to move on to the next question so we don't stay too long.
Sure.
You guys did a real like story about this. My only other opioid epidemic, oh my God, that I like freaked out and told everybody was Dope Sick on Hulu, right? It was very, very popular. It got a lot of awards. It had names and faces in the movie, in the acting world that we recognize. I think the story of Dope Sick, for those who don't know, highlighted the pain management companies and how they kind of use pain management patients, which are the people who come from the coal and now they're hurt because something happened in the coal mine and they can't even go to work. And it's just this whole, which we can, if you get devil put coal in the ground, you'll see like how one aspect trickles to the activist, trickles to the judge, and all these different trickles to the nurse. In Dope Sick, they did it in episodic, kind of like they wrote a story based off a book. I want to ask you guys, since you were on the ground, do you think there is a cycle? Because I didn't really understand how so like generations of people are just like falling still, where we feel the sadness, but it's also like this helplessness, this hopelessness. Like, how do I get out? A cycle between like the hard backbreaking work of feeling pride and then also now getting sick and dying of black lung and needing help. Like, what do you guys think?
Yeah. Well, I will also say that I had a very similar response to Dope Sick when I saw it. In fact, I was, my first thought was like, oh my gosh, our film needs to be part of this algorithm. I wish it was like, you could just like watch it at the end of it, because there was so much similarity in the themes. And it was a remarkable film structurally because it jumped back and forth in time and like it did it so well, And the overall takeaway from that to me was, just how parasitic these companies are and how they come in and they focus on a little town, of barely, 10,000 people, and they run pill mills there where 3 million pills went through over a course of 2 years. How possibly can a community compete with that when there's so much money and PR? And that's really what these films show you, is like how these PR machines get a hold of a drug and then market it to these doctors. I mean, it's insanity. It really is.
It truly is.
And so, but we don't really often see the end result of, well, what actually happens to real people, And so we wanted to show some of that, and the film really, the backbone of it was built on the addict story, Greg Carpenter. When I saw that interview, if you just watch the 45-minute raw interview of him, it is one of the most heartbreaking experiences I've ever had. I found myself in tears several times.
I definitely cried when I saw his part in the beginning.
Yeah, just because, there's the deck is so stacked against him, and yet his human spirit is fighting against it and fighting against it and fighting against it. And he was able to get himself, I think at the time of the interview, he had, 150 days of sobriety. It's just a remarkable, story about what the human spirit can overcome, against all the odds. And the truth is that many people are turned into zombies and die. And he had many stories of that in his town. And, when Peter was interviewing him, they encountered friends from the community who were in that condition. And he would be like, oh, I went to high school with that guy, And so, we were just really trying to be true to what the material was presenting to us and not like enforcing some top-down ideological idea of what we thought, this place was like,
For sure.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Dope Sick, because I do think our film makes a good companion piece. I think at the core of the film, it does address a lot of these issues around these diseases of despair that we've been hearing about increasingly over the last half decade. And we're hearing it in the current election cycle all the time now, right?
Yes, we are.
And I think there's you mentioned, there are so many fantastic films out there about West Virginia, not just Dope Sick. There's some fantastic docs that address different aspects of mountaintop removal, or if you're familiar with Dark Waters with Robert Ballot, Mark Ruffalo plays his character.
Yes, I did see parts of that.
That also
Mhm.
that's related to what we're talking about in terms of West Virginia from a big a big chemical standpoint. You got big petrochemical companies, you've got big pharma, you've got big coal companies, and they all come together and they create this interrelated web of factors that contribute to these diseases of despair. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to explore from a more holistic standpoint, how's all this stuff fit together, right? Because these aren't isolated, singular issues, right? People who are living in West Virginia are affected by all of them, and they're compounded. The experience of having to deal with these things and the trauma and the suffering that people are going through are compounded by all these factors.
Absolutely. The next question I have for you guys is like, what do you think it's going to take? I mean, I think the best thing coming out of this, so tired of hearing about his name, Trump, JD Vance, whatever, is that we're now focusing on a new person, JD Vance, where he comes from. I had already watched Hillbilly Elegy. I had read parts of his book. I'm a history teacher, so we're always just like seeing what's out there we can bring to our students. And from his book perspective and the movie perspective, it seemed like, okay, he'd be a person that would be championing a story like you guys. That's not actually what he's talking about or whatever. So politics part of it aside, just American people, how we care about things. Mental health is an epidemic. The climate change is an epidemic. How do we get more of us to just focus on this, bring it up to a ballot issue or whatever it's going to be?
Yeah, I mean, what can one say about JD Vance? I mean, you read a story every day in the newspaper about, what he was like, even 4 or 5 years ago, and what he's become. I mean, he really has sold his soul to the devil, and it's tragic, because there are things to like about Hillbilly Elegy as a story and in the book, and I remember, being moved by some of it when I read it. But that's not the same person we're dealing with anymore. And let's face it, everybody has their own choice as far as, are you going to be part of the problem or part of the solution? And
that
now,
part, yeah.
And so, if I have a talent in this life is filmmaking and editing, so, I carve out as much time as I can to do that, and as you know, as a filmmaker, you don't make any money doing this kind of work. You're doing your best to just get it, in some platform where people can see it, and to
sure.
help maybe shift the needle a little bit here and there and keep the topic fresh. As Peter said, there have been many documentaries made about these things, but it's like you want to keep the topic fresh so that the discussion continues and that it doesn't just wither on the vine.
Absolutely.
And as far as what it takes, I think it's about getting out of your comfort zone, and I'm really happy to see all this new energy behind, Kamala Harris, because once you get, there's certain people that you're never gonna convince.
Right.
You're just
I was
not
just about
gonna
to say that.
convince.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to grow the choir, your own choir. I think we've really learned that in the process of making our new film, The Invisible Doctrine. It's like, we need to make our choir sing, and have the energy there so that we can, get those small percentages of people to join in, and join in the enthusiasm and fun of creating a better world. So that's kind of my take on things.
We have a 10-minute time now, countdown,
Great.
but we're good.
Good. I read this great quote that someone remarked on Hillbilly Elegy and how it had been used as a decoder wing for white grievance within the Acela corridor in the Northeast. And I thought that was very accurate. I think some people have used that book as a reference point for understanding white grievance. particularly as it pertains to Appalachian communities. But it's one story, and it's JD's story, and it only tells a part of the story. And the important thing for me in terms of Hillbilly Elegy it's not the story itself, it's okay, what's your takeaway in terms of how to address this, right?
Right. That's my whole thing when I
And
watch.
you
Yeah.
know,
When we talk about it, like, let's talk about Bev though. Let's talk about his mom in the story. And everyone's like, no, no. I'm like, it's not about just JD. There's other characters in the story.
here JD Vance talking about now is the classic Republican, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. You have opportunity if only you can reach out and grab it. And you know, I think that's a classic trope that we've heard from Republicans on campaign trail for, generations now. This pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Um, you know, life is yours to grab. America's the land of opportunity. And clearly that's not taking into consideration all of the challenges that people have when they're living within a society where the governments that have been elected ostensibly to represent them and their needs aren't fighting for them or advocating for them on any level whatsoever. And I think that is the conversation that needs to be had as we enter the current election cycle.
Agreed.
Who are you voting for and why?
I heard a lot of
Are
that
you
echoed.
voting for your interests or are you voting against your interests?
That part.
How do you define what that means and is?
Yeah. I heard a lot of that's what you're saying now, sentiment in the, the white men and the white women for Kamala Harris calls that's the new like trend that everybody's going. That's right. But that's essentially it. Yep. It's us now, even me, Black America and Black Lives Matter. It's like to open our lens a little wider and see like there's other injustices that are equally as important. Like, like people getting shot is wrong. People being sought after from pill companies is wrong. Like, and that's what I think this election is. I think that's what we're all, the future of Americans, right? Like I'm 37 years old, I'm millennial, went to an all-white school. I was like a JD Vance in my own life, right? Like token Black, only one, trying your best to change the trajectory of your family and whatever. So we all know, because I feel like even him, like JD, like this is he's like 39. I'm like, bro, like come on.
Yeah, I know.
You're not like a Trumper. These people are like our grandparents' age. Like, you know what I mean? Like, stop.
Totally.
But
I think it's crucial to remember as we enter another big election cycle, right? That race and our perceived differences have always been used as wedges to separate us from one another and obfuscate the fact that we share more in common and that our dreams and our desires and our needs have far more in common than how they are painted and portrayed for us when it comes time to election season, comes around to election season, where there are interests who have more to gain by a divide and conquer strategy and get us to see one another as other, as opposed to figuring out the ways
united.
That we're all in this.
The name of our country is united. People forget that. Right. But you guys are awesome. I have one more question, and you kind of segued again, Peter. Was this film harder to produce? Was this film harder to produce than the one you guys did about the Holocaust deniers? Because I think you guys are really taking on like really difficult conversations that people are scared to have, especially people that look like you, and you're forcing it, I think, on people. So I just want to ask, behind the scene as producers, I know it's not always like people, you call people and they're like, I don't want to hear about this. We don't want to invest into this. Was this movie easier to make, harder? Tell us a little bit about just getting it out onto Apple.
Sure. I mean, everything takes, 3 to 4 times as long, and it's 3 to 4 times as painful to make than you think, So, I mean, each of the films is its own animal in a way, So, I mean, both of these films grew out of Healing from Hate. We met Tony, who's in Tony McAleer, who's the portrait film for The Cure for Hate, came out of the Healing from Hate film, And as we explained, the footage for Devil Put the Coal in Ground was actually shot initially for Healing from Hate. So, you know, I feel like you take your wins when you get them, but you know, listen, my film professor, and when I was in film school, he's like, "Oh, you want to be a filmmaker? Go bang your head against that wall for the rest of your life." Now, and I was like, "Oh yeah, whatever," you know. But like, that's the reality of it. You know, you're like, okay, you know, when am I gonna make it? When am I gonna, you know, be in that room with people who have money or get
Money.
You know, like we're film number 7, and
I lived in Hollywood, so trust me, I get it. It's like I'm leaving. I came back to New York. It's like I'm out of here. So
there
yeah.
you go. There you go. It's a big myth that they sell you, you know, and like in the film industry, it's like the same as everything else. It's like there's the haves and the have-nots, and we make our films on blood, sweat, and tears. You know, that's
Absolutely.
the reality of it.
And you keep our industry alive,
so
and we love it.
yeah, you know, and that's important to us.
For sure.
Well,
Any final thoughts for you guys? Go ahead, Peter. Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say, I think our goals are different, right? We don't make commercially based films.
Yeah.
We make films that are largely focused for the educational market, for to engage communities around having the sort of the crucial conversations and discussions of the day.
For sure.
And I feel good about that. I think both Lucas and I, you know, are adding a tremendous amount of value to a larger dialogue that we need to have in communities, in terms of our society. And you know, if we can do a little bit to help push the needle on that, then you know, I can sleep easy at night.
Absolutely. Well, this is what it's all about. Thank you guys so much for this interview. It's going to be on the T Show. We'll let you guys know. We'll send you guys the personal link, and then it'll be on a few other channels that run a media site. We'll share it there. And then whoever else pricks up interest, we will get it back to you guys. And hopefully, I work in schools. I'm trying to get more educators to pay attention and try to like buy into this, what you guys are doing, because there's a whole budget there too that we can pay for films and whatever. And we're just trying to like connect these things. So thank you guys so much for joining me here today. And this is where we leave you guys.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
guys for
Thanks
tuning
having
in.
us.
Of
Pleasure. All right.
course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Buddha.